and those who have already were part of the workshop yesterday and joining here today, you might actually be able to make uh, kind of like relate to certain things because we did speak about some of these details yesterday. I did touch upon some of these details. Today, what are we going to do here is we will basically be applying this, whatever we've learned yesterday. It's more of conceptual. We'll basically take it forward. I put together some very simple examples. Now, disclaimer, some of you here might already be working with skills, clouds, clusters, co-pilots, Gemini, all these tools. And you might actually be having a lot more better understanding of how things work. However, considering the fact that we're running a workshop with uh, which is an open workshop. We have not actually put in a criteria here. So I've decided to just make sure that I keep things simple, generic, and go through. Um, okay. Can you guys hear me well? Sorry.
Yes, Aman,
Yes.
this time it was clear, but I think with the distance, the voice is a bit
Oh,
broken.
okay. Okay. Let me see if I can. Just give me 1 second. You see,
This
it
is
might
perfect.
actually be the phone.
This is perfect.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'll continue to move with this. Okay, so that's it. That was a disclaimer. Let's continue with our day two, applied AI workflows, and let's move on. So during this day two session, what are we gonna do here is we'll spend 10 minutes of time recapping what we did, what we learned or what we discussed in our previous session. So say one, it's called the last session. Then we'll spend about 20 minutes on skills. We'll talk about what skills do, what they are, what are the various levels, and so on. We'll get into a little more details. I have some examples. I'll be running them live. I'll also be showing you what you need to do if you're actually planning to work with skills. Then we'll, spend like about 20 to 25 minutes talking about MCP server. Why we should actually be looking into it. What are MCP servers? I mean, even though we did actually have a very brief conceptual slide yesterday on MCP server, we'll take it further today. I'll be talking about Copilot agents. What do they do? How do they bring a different perspective from Claude, MCP Server, Cursor, and so on, and why you should be really looking into them as a potential candidate, especially if you are a part of technical communication, you are working with Microsoft Office or GitHub, for that matter of fact. How Copilot can actually help you. Then we will actually go through and spend about 20 minutes, 25 minutes on prompt patterns. Yesterday, I did share a link to one of my tools that I developed, which basically the objective of sharing it was to basically help you understand what prompting is all about, what are the various prompt techniques, and how you can actually write a better prompt. We will leverage that same prompt pattern and we will take one example, a very simple example, and then take it through these prompts and then see how that information can act. I mean, which is, let's call it the draft information, transforms into something worthy enough that we can share with customers. And we will be using various tools to do that. Thank you, Puneet, for sharing the link. So the link is now available in the chat in case if you guys are wondering what link I'm talking about. And finally, we'll actually, regroup. Again, it's more of, I would expect this to be a collaborative session, an interactive session. I really want you guys to basically come up and we'll probably be spending like 15 minutes, 10 or 15 minutes on talking about what your questions are, the concerns are, what are your areas that you're looking forward to, anything related to whatever we discussed in the workshop. Disclaimer, it might actually be very difficult for me to take questions and be able to answer anything which is very organization specific. So please try to keep your questions as generic as possible. Uh, you can, however, reach out to me over LinkedIn, and then we can, spend some time talking over your specific issues in case if you were really interested in sharing them with me. And then I can probably guide you, if in case if I'm aware. If not, it will be learning for both of us. Finally, I actually wanted to share my 30-day adoption plan. This is a plan that I put together. This is something that I recommend my team, anyone I meet or catch up with. I have also adopted this myself, and I want to share this with you all. And finally, I'll basically introduce you all, and that should be it. So, without any further ado, let's get started. So the first one here is what did we actually look in yesterday? Let's see if I can actually analyze this. Hope this is visible. So yesterday we spoke about the mental model. We started with LLM, what LLMs are, what are the pattern engines looks like, and what they do, why are they in the place. Then we spoke about 8 concepts. One of them, the primary risk, hallucination. We spoke about it. Then we also spoke about how those 8 concepts actually work together. Reduce hallucination because that's exactly the objective. We want our responses to be as technically accurate as possible and not wandering, and then you continue to ask the same question again and again. Then we spoke about the tool landscape where we discussed about, we had very brief slides on Claude, Cursor, GitHub Copilot, Gemini. We also saw different strengths that they carry and why, as a technical communicator, you should be using and where exactly you should be using them. We also spoke about the content lifecycle, the 7 places, and how AI plays a different role in each. And then I shared my 5 point check with you all, with an emphasis on the human gate before any publishes. So that was what we covered yesterday. We move on. And today we will be talking about we'll start with the cloud code skills. Now, um, we did actually discuss about this. So, what are skills? Skills are basically simple markdown files. Like they're basically files where you write information. This is no program. You don't have to remember variables, define public variables, private variables, write functions, close them. There's a syntax. No, it's a simple file with basic textual information in it, but that information should make sense. What is happening here? These are prompt templates. So, when you think of AI, or when anyone thinks of AI, what they basically think is, I could just go to uh, I can just open one of the AI model, AI agent, and then go ahead and type a text, give it a prompt, and then I get a response. Great. That's one way of interacting with AI. But in reality, AI can do a lot more than just chat or share information on chat, right? So let us assume that you have a task which is not just a single prompt. It basically is a series of steps that you would want to do. Now, how would you basically ensure that all those details are passed on to the agent and then to the module, of course, and then you get the desired result, and that's where skills comes into picture. Skills is a file which basically is more of like a reusable prompt templates. You can actually add personas to the skills. Now, for those who don't, uh, for those who basically think, have come across this word recently or are not aware of it, persona is basically a personality. Because consider it as your audience type, right? So let us say you're writing for developers. So developer is your persona. How would you actually define a developer? What kind of skills do you expect that developer should have? Right. So basically think of this like, when you're going out for a job, what do you need to basically understand the job, a job description, which basically defines what that role, is meant for, what are the requirements for that role, what kind of skills are being made, are required for that role, what are the qualifications, all of that, the whole JD for that role is actually a persona for that individual. So if you basically see a JD for a technical writer in a given company, that is a persona for the technical writer of that organization, right? So you can basically include all that information and call it as a technical writer persona. You can even name the persona and then call it Jack or Jill. And going forward, you can just tell Claude, hey, act yourself as Jack and then let me know what the results is. And Claude will basically go to that skill, read what Jack is, because Jack, as per you, is defined based on that JT. And then it will start reading that JT and then do further actions on it. We'll see that in a minute. So what are skills? And for those who basically have also heard about MCP tools, how are they different, right? It's very important for you to understand the distinction. And we'll come to MCP tools in a minute as well. So skills are basically prompt templates. By default, they are markdown files. So you will be using markdown language to write them. You'll save them as markdown files also. So the extension is .md. Uh, the language again is very natural. I mean, you don't write any code, you don't write stuff. Well, I think it's factually incorrect if I don't say if I say you don't write code. There is a bit of coding there, but that's advanced way of writing skills. Then it is all AI guided. You don't. I mean, it's non-deterministic at this point in time. Just go with the flow. The setup is very simple. Once you have your MD file, you just have to drop it in a right folder. Now, what do you mean by right folder? Why should I be doing that? We'll come to that in a minute. I have all of that listed here. And why should I be using, a skill? What is it best for? So understand, a skill is a best way of tackling workflows, reviews, and doc patterns. And I'm talking about technical communication. For developers, this is going to be a different area. So for technical communicators, skills are, your answer to automate a workflow, automate reviews, or perform, detailed reviews, or identify doc patterns and then generate reports as well, right? So that's what these are best for. Now, on the contrary, the MCP tools are mostly programs. They are executable functions. There is a protocol called MCP, which I mean, there's an official MCP standard. That was released by Anthropic, I think so, or no cursor. I'm losing the track here, but there's a protocol. It's a framework. It's a template, and you basically have to use that template and further, create more, functions, and all the other. So it's more of a program that you'll basically have to manage. I will share what an MCP would look like as well. Again, it is coding. So you can write MCP to the last I know in 8 different languages, including TypeScript, Python, Java, Ruby, C++, and more, .NET as well. It is deterministic because it always gives you the same result, right? I mean, every time you run, the expectation is, okay, you want a copy of a page, it will only give you a copy of a page, nothing more, nothing less. Setup is you will actually have to create this program, you will have to build it, and then you will actually have to generate an MCP server. So there's a lot of build and process and all that stuff. It's a lot more technical than compared to skills. So if in case you're interested in technology, go that side. But if you really want to keep yourself as a technical communicator and yet work on automation, skills is your best bet. These are best. I mean, the MCP tools are usually best for API calls, if in case you want to do APIs, database queries, calculations, and so on. A very good example of an MCP tool is, I'm not sure how many of you have Android or CarPlay Auto, right? I mean, CarPlay or Android Auto installed, and then use it when you actually drive a car. If I mean, I can give you an example right now. So Android Auto has recently introduced. I mean, in the maps, they've actually introduced voice support. They always had it, but now when you actually ask something, it actually opens Gemini. Okay, and then it says, okay, I'm sending your query back to Gemini, and then Gemini responds, to your question. So what is happening there? So basically, Map is an application, and when you actually ask a query, or you basically say, okay, navigate or show me navigation, or call XYZ person, that natural language query is processed, and then because you said call, uh, so the first thing is that natural language query is processed or sent to Gemini, which is the AI agent sitting in your Android Auto, basically is processed on your phone. And Gemini then understands that you actually want to call. So call basically would then trigger a phone function or calling function on your mobile phone, and it places a call. So all of that process. So so if you actually see here, it's not automation. It's actually a straight cut process. You tell something, you say call someone, it should basically go and call in person using your phone dialer. Period. And all of that is actually done using MCP servers right now. So that's a very good example. Play with it. You'll actually find out how interesting it is. And now that you start understanding things, it's all a game of MCPs now. So talking about skills, now that we've actually spoken about what skills and what MCP servers are, let's look at the skills a little more in depth, right? So today, skills can actually be done in three different levels. The first one is a global skill. So every time you install Claude on your PC, okay, or your Mac, it actually creates a .claude folder. Okay, and that's where all the original Claude configuration is, right? So when you install this program, Claude desktop or Claude code, on your machine, it actually creates a .claude folder, and within the .claude folder, there is a skills folder. If it doesn't, create one, and then create a name, and then let us say Aman, and then add the skill.md or whatever skill, addition, subtraction, whatever skill you want. Now, when you like, in this case, this is code review, right? So when I actually add code review here, the minute you actually add it to .claude skills folder, it basically is available throughout all your projects, everywhere in Windows. So if you're launching this at terminal, even in your C drive, D drive, E drive, doesn't matter, it will still work. uh, the next variation of it is project skills. So basically, what you'll actually have to do is you will have to go to a folder where you have your project. And within that folder where you have your project, within that drive, you have to create a .plot folder /commands and then add your markdown files there. Now, since you have added the .plot inside a specific folder, when you're running your cloud code at terminal or when you're running your cloud desktop, basically these skills will only be available within that project location. The minute you are outside of the folder, those skills will not work. They'll not be visible at all. So that's a way to basically distinguish that, okay, these are skills that you should only be running on this project. Forget about everything else. Finally, you also have a personal project skills folder where you can actually, so this again goes back to the global plot. And then there, just create a user folder. It could be your name. On Windows, this is different. On Mac, this is different. Just go to your user folder and then add the skill there. If you are, which is rare though, but if you have multiple users using the same location, and if and you because you've actually created a skill for a man, and if you are not a man, then this skill will not be visible for you. This is one way of like distinguishing or categorizing your skills based on either the user, project, or make it generic. Right. So these are the three levels of skills that you currently have, that plot code currently supports. So let's talk about our first skill, right? So there are three skills here on the screen that I'm projecting here. These are very simple skills, right? So the first one is summarize. So what does this skill look like, right? So when I actually say summarize.md, I'm basically can actually use the same name as a /command inside my cloud code. So what does summarize has? It basically says analyze the currently selected file or the file the user specifies for, and then provide purpose, key exports, dependencies, complexity, and keep the summary under 200 words. Simple. So any file that I actually, tell Claude, or I use /summarize and then I point it to any file, it basically just is supposed to give me these data, nothing else, right? Simple, very simple skill. Let us, first, let's see if we can actually try that. How about we go to these three and then we run the live demo. So let me take you to the other one. The second skill is a little bit different. So what is the difference here? The first one, it clearly, is all text, nothing else. It just says, okay, analyze the correct file or whatever file the user specifies, do this. The second one, it basically, basically adds, variables here. So you can basically add variables, which basically makes it kind of like you're now making this skill more robust, right? So instead of user specifying something, you just basically are taking in arguments. You're understanding what those arguments are. You're either questioning the user, taking more answers from him, and then you're processing things, right? So it's more of like, if you want to bring interactivity while you're running skills, you can do that using dollar arguments, right? Or any of those dollar variables. And this is what the other skill does. I'll run this skill as well. Finally, what about let us say I have three skills. One does this, the second one does the second part, the third one does the third part. Now, how about I want to call these three skills in a specified order, plus do something else, which I call the chaining skills, right? So that is also possible, and which is what is here, right? So perform a complete review of this project's MCP server and check that this exists. If not, tell the user to run slash MCP manifest first, which basically is nothing but there is a slash MCP manifest command or skill that he has to run first. Then validate the server, which is slash MCP validate checks, right? So when you can actually go ahead and add these skills in a defined order, or tell, or instruct the agent. That ways, you're not just running skills individually yourself, but you can now run one skill, which is further calling in all the other skills in the order that you define, plus doing a lot more, right? Now, now, when you're working with skills, there's certain best practices and certain do's and don'ts that you need to remember. The first one is you need to be very specific. The more specific you are, the better. Don't give generic statements, right? Be as specific as possible. If you want your output in a very specific format, tell. You can right away say, okay, generate a table or generate a checklist or generate, you know, maybe table and checklist. So be very specific about it. If you want flexibility, if you want to bring a little bit more of like interactivity within your skills, of course, use arguments. We have that example here. Remember, one skill is for one focused task. When you want to do chaining, that's a different story because then you basically are bringing them all. It's like a parent and a child topology. But one skill should be one focused task. Don't give multiple tasks inside one single skill. Hallucination starts, right? Or your result might actually not be as that great, right? So remember that part. Now, of course, you it is not recommended that you write code inside skills. Skills are supposed to be marked down. Simple, natural language. Don't write code. Don't exceed more than 500 words. Okay, if you have to do it, split it into multiple skills and then call it inside a parent skill. But do not exceed 500. That's like, that would be max. Even that would be max. So keep your skill as simple as possible. Um, I think this one is MCP specific, let's say. Yeah, skip the output format spec. Let's look into it. Let's see. Okay, yeah, before we go there, let me quickly pull up the skills for you. Just put a quick demo here. Let's see if I can actually pull the skills terminal. Okay. Yeah, so this is Claude code. Let me also arrange this part as well so that you can actually see. Okay, so this is Claude code, and I already have these specific skills in the folder that I've defined. So let me pull that folder as well, and I'll show you what I've done with the folder here. Okay, yeah, there we go. Oops, don't really want to do that. Okay, So if you're actually seeing here, I have the summarize.md already added to the commands folder, which is a dot plot. So it's a very generic folder now. Once I've done that, let's see if I actually have summarize. But before I go there, let me pull up a file as well, where which I want it to read. So give me bear with me for a second. I'll basically go with this article here. Okay, so yes. Okay, so let's see. I say slash summarize. So now you're seeing here, the summarize has already come up because I've added it into the generic folder. This command is now available. Now remember, this command is not provided by default. Since I created it, I got it. And then here, I'm actually pasting this file here, which is again the DMCP training file. And let's see what it does, right? So the idea here is analyze it. Wow. Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's a long one. Okay. Yeah. Give me 1 second. I have to pull up a smaller file. Then this one is going to be Let's see if I can actually put this one. Yeah. Okay. Oh, it's still doing it. Okay. There you go. Even though it actually gave me an error, look at this summary, purpose, single page training LMS, key exports. This is, it navigates between, because it's an HTML file, it's actually this presentation here. So these are the navigation points and all that stuff. And I've created this using Tailwind, CSS, and then Google Fonts and, vanilla JavaScript. So these are the dependencies. And complexity is like, okay, what is this really complex or what is going on here? So it's just telling me what this file is. It is just monolithic, and that's what my HTML presentations are. They are always monolithic, right? So now you see here, I mean, the only thing that I actually told Claude is summarize. But what actually was happening behind summarize was all of this, right? So now I gave Claude all these commands. I'm not telling Claude, analyze currently selected file, then provide me purpose, key export, then describing what it is. So it is a lot more easier way of interacting with agents and saving your tokens, or probably let us say using it in a much more optimized way, right? So that is this. That was this, and of course you can. I'll share these, this HTML with you guys, and maybe you want to actually go ahead and play with the other two, skills as well. Okay, so let's see. Oh, any questions so far before we move on?
Hi, Aman. This is Rekha. I have one
Mhm.
question.
Yeah,
So, in the first one and second one, so in the second one also we need to give file maybe, right, as the input.
yeah,
And in the
yeah.
first prompt also, right now you just give the file as the input. So, I'm not
Right.
sure of the difference between these two.
Yeah. Okay. So in the first one, right? I mean, I actually have to run summarize on something, right? So I
Right.
have to tell Claude which file I need to run summarize on. This is
Mm.
okay. But when you actually saw the result, the template was pretty much clean. The second one, on contrary, you're
Mm.
saying you're a test engineer, generate unit test for, and then
Mm.
I said arguments. But when
Yeah.
I actually pass this, what will happen is the arguments will be replaced with this file name. So
Okay.
when you're generating test cases, right? I mean, you really want to know which file you've actually generated the test case for, right? So arguments usually take in whatever argument you provide here. It
Mm.
basically just mimics that argument here. So it's a little bit of like adding a little bit of dynamic. I don't know, maybe call it dynamism. Or just bringing in those details right inside your report as well. Because the first report, you would just simply say, okay, this is what I found. In the second one, it will clearly tell you that, okay, while I was reading through the parsers.ts file, and I found this. And then it continues to use that name everywhere inside your report. And this skill would, will continue to basic. I mean, you're not changing the skill, you're just changing the file or the argument. And every time you give a different file, the arguments will be replaced with that file, right? So it's a very simple example. I would actually say on how to use variables. There can be a lot more complexity that you can actually create with
Mm,
just this support.
okay. Yeah, probably they are similar, very similar examples. So that's
Yeah,
why.
they are. I mean,
Mm,
I'm just trying to keep things very simple here. But once you start playing with this and then you start adding a little bit more complexity to it,
mm,
you will realize that these skills are actually very powerful. They're not, they're not just simple files. They are more than markdown files. And that's and one more thing, if you guys have noticed this, I've been constantly telling this is a markdown file. Now, when we bring markdown file into picture, that basically means we bring technical communication into picture. I mean, we have been doing this like, I don't know, since day one. You joined as a technical communicator. Yes, you've been writing Word documents maybe, but you're still writing, right? So now imagine even a developer. I mean, imagine all this while if you had to do automation, you had to rely on a developer. You would actually have to tell him, hey, you know what? Add this, add that. And then he would basically go and add a program, a batch file, a shell script or a Python script, which will do things. You don't need that anymore. What you need is what you want, write it. Write
mhm.
it in simple English and tell the agent to do it. Period. Right? So you don't need any shell scripts or batch scripts anymore to get your job done. Right?
Yeah.
So writing has become really, really, really important now. In fact, I was also hearing that we now need writers to basically write specs even before the product is developed. That has never happened before, right? So writers usually come at the fag end when the product is almost at the delivery, sometimes in between in the sprints as well. When the features are being developed and you basically read that feature, document it, and then continue to process that feature. But now, because it is critical that you're actually leveraging agents, you need to ensure that the language that you're using inside a skill to process that is accurate, it's technically correct. I mean, it makes sense. So now, they want writers to basically work on the specs the very first place, even before they actually start developing the feature. So from fag end to beginning, transition, right? So you would now, as we progress in this era, you will see that a writer is becoming more of an, I mean, it's an orchestration, let's put it that way. And we are now switching places. We basically are working hand in hand with developers now, right? Because they eventually will always have issues. I mean, they are great developers who can write, no offense there, but their primary job is to develop a feature, not to write about it, right? But as a technical communicator, our primary job is to understand the feature and write about it in basically in terms that make sense. And that's exactly what a skill is about.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure.
Aman, we
Someone
have
just asked.
two questions there in the chat. So Ravi asks, can you show the skills.md file that you wrote?
Ah, okay. So the skills.md file is exactly the same thing that I just ran, right? So this is the file. I actually put the whole code here on the screen. So this is my skills.md file or the summarize.md file. There's nothing in it other than this. I literally copied the content of my skills.md file here. And the second question here is about using the web version. Of course. So the web version here, again, I don't use a lot of web versions. So I might actually have there you go, right? So go ahead on the web. You have skills, add a skill, and then either you basically search for the default skills that you have, and if you don't, then you can basically go ahead and create a skill. Use a skill creator, okay, and then tell what you want the skill to be about, right? So it would be like summarize summarize the specified file. and list the purpose. What was the other thing? It was purpose, like key exports dependency and complexity. Okay. Key exports dependency, dependency and complexity. Let's see what it does. All right. So what it will do here is it'll actually create a skill for you online, and there you go. Right. And then he'll actually, create a skill, to specify it and do it. It's probably gonna ask you a couple more questions as you like, and you look like you want to apply skill creator workflow. Summarize person, but I don't see the file attached. So here, I mean, in an online version, you basically have things go a little different. You actually have to, also submit a file that you created. Let me try and see if I can actually add that file here for you. And then in the skill creator, let me go ahead and upload the file that I already have, which is a summarized file. Let's see if I can actually got that file. Okay. And then let's see what that is. Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So it's just verifying it. It's just telling you. I unfortunately I don't use the web version a lot. It does support skills, but then again I've not used it in such a in such a crazy. And then the free plan kind of like also gives you certain limitations. I have to upgrade it. Um, Maybe I'll actually play. That's a good learning for me. I should actually go and play the web version as well. I usually use the command line version because that's much more stronger. It basically has access to my folder and files and get my job done much faster rather than me uploading information on the web and then continue to interact with that browser interface. Okay, so those are the two questions, I guess. And is there anything else that we have here? Okay. Yeah, unfortunately, Devin, I cannot talk about a lot about the web version, as I mentioned, because I don't use it a lot. But I would love to actually play and put in some time. Oh, thanks for letting me know. That's a learning for me. Now, okay, so that was skills, guys, and then we can go ahead and experiment. I'm going to share these skills with you, or you can take a screenshot and write the skill yourself and try it through, and then see how it works. I mean, you'll be really fascinated to see when things work when you don't actually have to write a program to automate something. So try it. Let's quickly move on. I mean, we have to move on to the MCP now. It's already some time, and right after this topic, I'll give like I'll take about a 5 minute break. So Puneet has something to share with you all. So let's finish this topic. Okay, so MCP. Yesterday we did actually visit the same slide, pretty much similar, and we are talking about okay what MCP does and why you should actually have MCP and so on, right? Now, my take was like skills are great. I mean, whatever skills we just did, these are awesome. They basically need some file. You provide that file, and then it actually does something. What if this file of yours was on Confluence page? Or what if there is a Jira ticket? Or what if the file is on GitHub? Right? Now, the question is, you might actually think, oh, I can actually download it on local drive and then run the skill. Well, of course you can, but in reality, you should basically be using something called as an MCP when you're working with that agent. Now, what MCP does is it basically adds a layer, an interactive layer to to your assistant. It could be the Claude, Cursor, or Copilot, any one of them, perfectly fine. They all go the same way with a subtle difference of how you install it. The installation instructions are different. So you have to pay attention to which MCP server you're installing and what are those installation instructions. Once you follow those instructions, those MCPs will be, integrated with your IDE, with your agent, And then when you actually run a skill, which basically says, okay, go and fetch a file from this URL, or basically you point it to a GitHub location or to a Jira ticket, the agent would then reach out to the MCP, protocol layer, and will see, okay, you're talking about a ticket. That basically means I need to reach out to Jira, which is an Atlassian MCP server. If you talk about a conference or a wiki page, I reach out to the Atlassian MCP server. If you're talking about PRs, issues, and GitHub repos, I'll reach out to the GitHub MCP server. Local files, there's a file system MCP server. You don't need it. And usually agents are good enough to actually access file system. And for web search, either you can actually provide other MCP servers like Figmas, Miros, whatever tools you use, there are MCP servers today available. Just put a search and see if there's an MCP server. If there's an MCP server, try to install it and play with it. Now, I have something called as a GitHub MCP server here. I use this to basically interact with my GitHub files. And if you actually see here, the installation instructions are different for each of the agents that we have. So there's an anti-gravity, Claude, C-line, Codex, Copilot, CLI, which is the Copilot command line, Cursor, Gemini, and so on, right? So let's go to Cursor. And because that will be like a good time for me to basically share the cursor interface as well. Okay, so let's see this. So I come to this page here and it says, oh, you need to have Cursor ID installed. Yes, I have it installed and you can install it as well. It's free of cost, so you don't have to spend a penny. It is a Visual Studio Code fork, so it looks very similar to Visual Studio Code. If you have not used it, I strongly recommend you to install Cursor ID and start using it. It's a one-stop shop. Then you also need GitHub personal access token, and personal access token is usually your, uh, it basically constitutes of your username and password in a key format, in an encrypted key format. It's an encrypted version. The idea is a program would need this personal access token to basically mimic you and then do the process, right? So you don't want to be entering your password every time and all the time. Now, if you're doing this locally, you know, if you understand what Docker is, great. If not, even then it still works. So let's go ahead. And then after I have the cursor ID, I have my personal access token. So both of them are good. Let me go ahead and click on this button. It's an easier way of installing these days MCP servers to a given IDE. And I click on add to cursor. It basically would ask me to open the cursor app. Let's go ahead and see that. Okay, there you go. This is my cursor app. This is my training module too. And look at it. So cursor settings, there is tools and settings. If you are not aware of where to get this, go to cursor, click on settings and cursor settings, and you get this interface. But you don't even actually have to realize it. As I just showed you, a click of button would do everything for you. And here it basically is asking you to install MCP server, right? And then it's also telling you, okay, what is your so it basically needs your token or pad, and I'm gonna be pasting this. So my pad here, and then and then click on install. Right, that's it. That's pretty much it, right? So I already have Atlassian. I now have GitHub. Now, if you actually see here, GitHub MCP server has 45 tools and 2 prompts. That's a good one to remember because now we will be talking about what is MCP server and how it actually does that. Let's see. Click on this one and you will see what all these MCP server can do. It's like having a skill of doing something, right? So there's an add comment to pending review, which is a skill. And these are all the parameters. Add issue comment, reply. Now, you don't have to remember any of these tools. These are not something that you'll have to remember. The idea of, publishing or showing you these tools is that this MCP server can do all of this on behalf of you, right? So the minute you basically put in a query, let us say, add the following comment to my XYZ issue. The minute you say that, the natural language query is read by the MCP, and then it basically identifies which tool it should revoke, call. Since you said add the following comment to my XYZ issue, it automatically identifies that this is an add issue comment situation. So it basically invokes add issue comment, and whatever language or whatever comment you gave or whatever issue number you gave, it automatically picks that up and then adds a comment to that issue. That's it. That's what MCP does. Everything happens in the background. You give a natural language query, and then it is MCP's jobs to identify what is the right tool, that it should invoke. Sometimes your natural language query might actually be difficult. You say add the comment to issue, then the MCP will struggle. Where is the comment and what is the issue? So it'll ask you a question. So when an agent is coming back and asking you, I don't see an issue number here, can you provide me an issue number? Or I don't see a comment here, can you provide me a comment? It is its way of understanding, do I have all the parameters needed to invoke a tool? I don't. I know that I have to invoke add issue comment, but I don't have the issue number. I don't have the body. I know the owner and repo because that is already provided in the PAT. So that is taken care of, but I don't have to. So in a way to tell that you're missing these two things, it basically, starts, asking you questions so that you can get information. And once you provide that information, it would then say, okay, let me go ahead and add an issue to add a comment to your issue number XYZ. And then it will invoke this tool and take it forward, right? So, so this is like next level automation, pretty much next level automation. And the best thing and why this is important for technical communicators is because we interface, we work with these tools day in and day out. We work with Jira, we work with Confluence, we work with GitHub, okay? And then we work with pretty much a lot of tools, right? I mean, we work with Visio, we work with Figma. I don't know how many of you do that. Mermaids. Pretty much every company out there is trying to bring an NCP server to basically give users the tools and the opportunities to interact with their product using AI agents. Right? It's a time saver. It's an easy way, and it's a more interactive way of doing things. So this is how you install an MCP server. This is how you do it. And let me just, now that we are here, let me, see if I can actually open a window. No, not this one. Okay, so let me see if I can actually open a window. Okay. This is, okay. So I have my cloud code, which is all configured, hopefully. Okay, so I have my cursor settings done to GitHub, and let me, and then I know that I've configured my GitHub already. So let me go to my GitHub and try and see if I can actually find out issue, which I know I can. Don't have it yet. Let's just go ahead and create a new issue here, and then I say this issue. This is test. Okay, let me just create this issue. I have some issue here, and this is the issue number. Okay, so what I'm gonna do here is let me just copy this link, go back to my cursor, and let's see. Oh, this is not gonna work. I'm not. This is not gonna work. Yeah, this would not. Okay, yeah, let's do this. So I'll go ahead and say add let's close this issue. This is test 2D issue. That's it. Let's see what happens next. doing live demos is quite a daring task. Let me put it that way. Anything can go wrong. You should have blessings of your demo gods to basically make sure that your demo is all going fine. So we'll continue. We'll let it work on this one and go back to our presentation. Is still planning. Unfortunately, I think it's probably my internet. And we'll go back to that one in a minute and see. So now you see here, as a technical communicator, it could basically bring in a lot of value addition. You could basically do things in a jiffy than manually going and pasting information. You can pull in data from wiki pages, you can pull in data from Jira, and imagine if you basically have to process all that information to basically create a feature document. How easy would that be? Like if you're working on one feature and then just simply say, I'm working on XYZ feature. I would like to actually create a feature document. Can you pull, data from XYZ confluence page? There's a ticket here and then the GitHub PR is here, period. And let the agent do its job. Now, since you already have the Atlassian MCP and Jira MCP server configured, you have the GitHub server configured, the agent will now have no issues accessing that data and getting all that information, processing it, and then if you actually add a little bit more template and structure to it, it will even give you the output in that format. Again, remember that output that you get, I call it an excellent first draft. It definitely needs human interface. So as a technical communicator, I strongly recommend that when you generate a first draft, go through it, have an evaluation, have a review, and only then process or submit it for publication. Okay, so yeah, this was the MCP server I was actually talking about. So in reality, these are all configured inside JSON files in your IDE. You don't need to know all these technical details. I just thought it'd be easier for me to show how to install it the easier way. The difficult way is you'll actually have to write this code in the JSON files, and these are the JSON files that you will actually have to modify. Um, Okay, yeah. So this is what I was actually talking about. So what you can do once MCP is connected, right? You can just simply say, find the Confluence page for blah, blah API and summarize what changed since last quarter, period. It will just go find that page and then summarize everything. You can just simply say read Jira epics and then extract. You can even extract images. You can even actually generate a release note documentation. And all of that using simple natural language prompts. Very simple. Trust me, I as an individual, I love playing with these MCP servers. They give so much of flexibility as a technical communicator, and it makes automation, just a cakewalk. Okay, before we go here and I show you the GitHub Copilot agent, any questions on MCP? And since we just covered MCP, I would say this is a good time we take about a 5-minute break. And I'll hand it over to Puneet here.
Yes, Aman, very much here. So you can click a small pause and yeah, people. So thank you very much for staying here. And I hope everything is going great. So just need two things from you right now. First, it will be great if you can share your feedback so that we also know where all we need to improve. I have shared a link in the chat. It will hardly take 1 to 2 minutes. With just please open that and share your feedback. And once we are done with it, so we have a few questions about the course from people, so we'll take up those. So please do that. I'll take a 1 minute pause.
Okay, so that's an interesting question. No, they are not same. MCP RAG basically needs data. It's more of like a collection of data. MCP is basically a way to interact with that data. It actually, it is like self-defined prompts. And so it basically helps you automate it. These are like, how do I put that? Well, these are like pipes or pipelines which basically connect you to that data. So you can basically pass through that pipeline. You can copy, paste that data. But RAG is more of like data collection. Yes, they both. Actually, GitHub MCP is open source because GitHub is. Atlassian MCP, I mean, MCPs are available for download. You can actually download them. But then, if you don't have an Atlassian subscription, then the MCP would just not work because you would need a personal access token or some kind of authentication to basically allow that MCP to interact with data. So if you don't have that authority or if that permissions are provided, then that MCP will not work. But yes, those MCPs are available out there.
Okay, I'm on mute. Sorry. So I hope you all are submitting the feedback form, and those who have submitted. So I will just share the link of this course that we have introduced. We discussed about it yesterday also. And so as you all are aware, so this course will be starting on June 13th and finishing on July 5th. So this is a 4 week course where 8 sessions will be conducted during weekends, Saturday, Sundays, morning 10:30 to 12:30. And thanks to those who have already registered. Others did have some questions, so we have tried to answer that separately. Here, unless you ask a question, so the only information is that, like you mentioned yesterday, for this particular session, those who are attending this mentorship session yesterday and today, we have this discounted price of 12,500. This will be open till today night. After that, tomorrow onwards, the early bird offer of 15,000 will be applicable. And so please do take a look. And in case you have any questions, you can ask right now. And as probably if you have explored the curriculum, this is a very extensive course. And we are sure it will help you.
Thank you, Puneet.
I have
Thanks
a
for insights.
question
Yes, Shanali.
for the workshop thing. So, do I need to have a cloud this thing a premium version of it to enroll in the course? Is it a prerequisite?
It would be great to basically have it for sure because you will be working with skills, MCP servers, and so on. So it is highly recommended that you basically get one. And it's an opportunity that we want everybody to basically interact with these AI agents, especially with cloud, so that we get a taste of what is happening in the world right now.
Okay, got it.
And so in terms of cost, also that subscription won't cost you more. It has a lot of benefits apart from what we will do in the course. In that it will help, but apart from that, also the cost factor is, I think, pretty less, $5, $6, something like that. So, and in case, I mean, when we will send the meeting invite and all, so we will be helping you with the link how to do it. Okay, anybody
So
has any other question for the course? Otherwise, I will shut and let Aman take over.
I have posted my query in chat, Puneet.
Uh,
okay, this is about the KTN Docs content
Yes,
management data
yes,
tool.
yes, yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I'm looking at it, and so here's the thing, right? I mean, treating docs. I mean, I've been a treating docs user myself in the past, and I've been working with data. But what is happening here is the markdown is not just about APIs now, because agents, they love markdown. They basically need Markdown to read it much more easier. XMLs and PDNs and HTMLs are actually causing issues. So companies are now moving Fortunately, unfortunately, they are now thinking about how to basically provide their data to agents. And so they basically are thinking of Doc's code as an, as a way to do it. So I'm not sure if your company is looking at it or right now not, but at some point in time they will have to, push the data or the information that you are, publishing to the agents or let the agents read the information. And the easiest way to do that would be Markdown or providing the sources as well. So it might not happen right now. I'm not sure about what the organization mission is, but it eventually. I would strongly recommend that as an individual, you should have awareness of what is going around you, other than data ingredient docs, because the way we are generating document, the way we are editing document, and the way we are processing document is bound to change very fast.
Okay. Thanks, Aman.
Yeah, sure, sure. I mean, it's your personal. I would actually say it is a very good to have, workshop. It will basically help you get things done, and might actually add to your skills and to your work portfolio as well. You can go ahead and talk to your org about these things, and
Yeah.
then you let them know that you are capable of doing these things, and that might actually open a completely different set of opportunities for you as a technical communicator as well.
Okay. Thanks, Aman.
Sure.
Okay, so yep, thank you all for sharing the feedback, and some of you have commented there. So just I will add two lines. So this is a mentorship session, as you all know, where we touch on the details to help you set a roadmap. That's the intention of this mentorship session. Of course, the course that we are introducing covers everything in detail. You can see the curriculum, demo, practice, and the course certainly intends to have you at a stage where you can do everything that's mentioned there. So for any related questions, feel free to connect separately. And yep, with this, Aman, all yours. We
Sure.
have a
So I'm
few
sharing.
questions here.
Yeah, I'm looking at it, and I'll actually come to those questions. I think the
Okay,
only one that's pending is from Monica, so I'll get back to her
okay,
in a
sure.
minute or two. Yeah, thanks. So okay, so I'm sharing my cursor screen, and you can see it actually understood. Even though I just said, and let's close to this issue. This is test to the blah 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 issue. I never mentioned it was GitHub. I never mentioned what it has to do, and it actually got this. Now let us say run. Now the reason it did not do it because I don't want it to do things on its own. I want it to ask every time it's doing something, which is the very safe way of working with agents. So when I click on run, and so there you go, right? So it is now searched for all the tools, and there you go. It is now searching for the ticket. See this. So this is all the tools it has actually searched for, and it already has found what tool it should use. And there you go. The comment has been added, and this is the comment link. So let's go and see if the comment has been added already or not. So we go. The comment has been added, right? So I didn't go into GitHub. I didn't go into any of this. I just configured my cursor to access GitHub and just go about and then ask it. In fact, I can even actually go ahead and ask cursor to basically say, hey, go ahead and create a ticket for this situation that I'm seeing right now. And it will basically read that file and then go ahead and he'll create an issue for me. So it's like a cakewalk. And imagine if you have to automate this, or if you're actually working on, something like, as I told you, feature documentation, just put a request. I mean, just put a one line and just say, okay, fetch any relevant, PRs or issues related to the feature I'm documenting right now, and let me know if I'm missing anything. Period. I mean, let the agent do its job, right? You basically are just telling. I mean, I see this agent as like your buddy, someone who's basically doing all the research for you, getting back the details, so that you are on top of the work that you're doing. You're not spending time on doing all this stuff. Now you have an agent to take care of it, right? So you have now got your time for your work, for things that you always needed time for, right? For your skill upgrades, for putting in that time and effort into that documentation, the quality of documentation and all that stuff. There you go. Right. So that's how the MCP server works. Now that I've configured it, you can actually see that I can now use my agent to give it commands and fetch data from GitHub without even accessing GitHub at all. Okay, so that was the MCP server today, and we'll move on to GitHub Copilot agents. Now, GitHub Copilot agents, as I told you, Copilot can either be in the Microsoft Office applications as well. You have it in Teams also, if I'm not wrong. You can actually use the Teams Copilot to basically create agents, and then you can run agents on anything that you have access to, or at least the Copilot has access to. But GitHub also has, Copilot that, that gives you a completely different, actually, set of control over things which are there, which are only in GitHub, right? So if your documentation is in GitHub, you need to enable Copilot, and there you go. There's a small cute icon here that says chat with Copilot, and that's it, right? So you now have a chat interface right within your Copilot, and then I would just simply ask or tell, or the thing is, just go on. Now it has access to your GitHub repository. Now imagine if you have all your docs inside GitHub repository, and you want to basically run search and replace, or you want to ensure that all of these docs adhere to certain quality checks. That's going to be like a cakewalk now, because you just need to make sure that all your quality checks are properly documented in a skills file, which is a markdown file. Give that markdown file to your Copilot agent, and then say scan the whole repository for this check, and generate a report, period. Right, so you don't have to go in, no other automation is needed. The agent is actually going to go right and do that job for you. Right. So that's the GitHub Copilot in a nutshell for today. And this is what. So if you basically want certain set of rules inside your GitHub repository, create a .github create a .github folder inside your repository and add all your markdown files there. And then you can actually use those markdown files as slash commands right here. Because I don't have one in my repository, I cannot, bring them up. But if you go ahead and create a .github folder and then add all your style instructions, validations, checks, and all that stuff as separate .md files, you are all good to go with your GitHub Copilot, and then you'll have a lot more control over your files and it. Uh, let's try to sum it up now. Let's put it all together. So if you are doing, if let us say so what are the various layers that we actually spoke about today? We spoke about prompt. We did even speak about that yesterday. In Claude, you can do this in chat. Basically, projects for context. I mean, if you actually open this in Visual Studio Code, you can actually select a text and then ask Claude to work on it. In Cursor, you can actually do it within the chat panel or the composer. And Copilot, you can basically do this in the ask mode. Reusable rules, you can basically provide them as a system prompt or prompt instructions. In Cursor, they are called as .cursor rules file. And in GitHub, it's actually called the .github folder and then Copilot instructions.md. Make sure that you do not change the name. These are the names that must be retained. The Claude doesn't have something like rules today. The Cursor in Copilot does. Skills are basically in smaller automations, one specific project or work or task that you need to complete, and the skills are usually invoked as slash with the skill name, which is also the name of the file in Claude Code command line interface or on desktop. The same works in Cursor, in the Cursor terminal as well. Unfortunately, Copilot does not have anything like skills today. When it comes to agents, Claude basically is capable of running sub-agents and multi-step tasks. That basically means that when you actually give a bigger or a complex task, Claude internally creates sub-agents, and one agent basically does one job. So if you actually said Claude like, hey, okay, you know what, open a file, give it this name, then write this description, draw a Venn diagram, use Mermaid to draw a flow chart, and then create a table and so on. So when your list of instructions is huge, Claude, what it does is it actually creates sub agents. One agent takes care of one job. When this is done, it comes back and it reports back to the main, main Claude code agent, and it gets closed, right? So it's more like people who understand Java or Java threads can actually relate to it with Java threads. So multiple ways. Now, when such a thing happens, there is latency. So sometimes cloud code can actually take a lot of time to get your job done. It's not because it is stuck, it's just because that it has actually invoked a lot of agents in the background, and it will not move forward, or it will not tell you anything unless it has received the responses from all these sub agents, right? So that is how Cloud is able to actually cater to huge doc sets or complex data. And that's why it's like most preferred application at this point in time by developers. Cursor also has an agent mode as well. It has both the text mode and an agent mode. Let me just quickly show you. There you go. There's an agents window here. You open this, and then it basically takes you into an agent mode. You can actually create a new agent, write automations and customizations. So you can actually run a lot many more agents that way. Cursor has also introduced multi-step instructions as well recently in the Cursor 3 version. So even that is possible now. Then, yeah. So, and then MCP, of course, as we have already said, this is a completely independent entity. There are two kinds of MCPs, one that you can install on your desktop, the other one, which is already available. The only thing you have to do is point, which is exactly what we did with the GitHub server. We did not install any file. The only thing we did is like point to the GitHub server. There is an MCP server which is hosted somewhere by GitHub, and we are just pointing to that MCP server. And every time you give instruction, your agent is connecting to that GitHub server based on your PAT and your internet access, and asking that server to take care of all that information or whatever you want to proceed and go forward with. So if you ask which should you use, well, the answer would be like start with what you have at this point in time, and then see what is the scope, where exactly do you want to go. Now that I was able to help you with all these details, take your step forward and then see if you need an MCP to get the live data, and if you do, install MCPs. And if you want to play further more with more complex data and stuff, strongly recommend you to move to Cursor or Claude, and then try your hands on it. Let's skip this part here because we've already done this demo. So, okay. Yeah, this is an architecture example that I put together. So if something is changing often, like for example, if you basically want a whole platform for yourself, like a solution for yourself, which is a document solution, what you should be using where, right? So remember something, if there are things that are changing, like logic, review, checklist, tone rules, task instructions, these should actually be rules or skills, right? Don't basically make them agents because they are constantly changing, they're volatile. Keep them as skills, it will be a lot more easier to basically modify those skills. When you basically have a workflow, like you want to basically run a scan, or there's like run a quality check, run a validation check and all that stuff, like there's a workflow sequence that you want to do, then use an agent, which is basically nothing but a combination of skills. And finally, have an MCP layer also configured, which basically will help you get more data or interact with the other ecosystems that are available around you, not just the documentation, but Jira tickets, GitHub PRs, Confluence pages. Slack also has an MCP server. Teams has an, I mean, you can basically use that, gather information from Teams. So now, if you actually, you cannot, I feel like, a technical communicator cannot go and then say that the information is fragmented. It's really hard for me to get that information together. Well, MCPs and skills can actually help you get that done now. So go ahead and see how you can actually, bring in all this fragmented data together for your, purpose of for your day-to-day tasks. Well, I think we are pretty much at time. So this was a question that I basically, I thought we could actually share out, maybe take some time, and you can probably let me know which prompt will like if you remember a prompt that out of your past experience or your recent experience that really worked out, and maybe you can actually just put that prompt in the chat, and we can probably, like people can actually rate, or they can actually see if that's a prompt that they could probably use for their work purpose as well. So just go ahead and share out a prompt that you that has worked for you, or that you think is like something that's going to work for this community. So please use chat for doing that. Take a minute or two to do that. And finally, I come to my 30-day adoption plan, right? So I want you all uh, to basically, make a mental note on, if you want to basically take a note of this one. But before you leave, make sure that you have these four things. One is, um, okay, yeah, I'll come to your question, Ravichandra. That's a very good question. So one workflow to adopt first, and then one quality check to standardize, one metric to track, and one escalation rule for high risk content, right? So try to basically, um, and I'm actually using my chart here. Sorry, that question kind of like got me distracted. Okay, so what I want you to do here is give yourself a 30-day commitment. Go and then first adopt a tool, play with the workflow. Then see what you can actually standardize, and once you've actually be able to, standardize something, track a metric. Continue to do that. Continue to do that in phases. Don't basically take a bigger gap or a bigger solution. Break it into pieces. And once you have first one working, move on to the second one and continue to track everything. See what are the problems, what are the high risk situations there, and is there an escalation, or is there a concern or a problem? And if there is a problem, I would really want you to, definitely go ahead and research. But you can also reach out to us and then, share your, share your experiences as well. It's a big commitment. Take it. I've been, talking to, my peers. I've been talking to people within this industry about, what I'm doing. I'm working on a lot of projects. Some people, sometimes very crazy. I consider sometimes things that I'm working on being crazy, but it's a thought. I just started with a thought. I try to take it up to a level and then see if there is a problem statement that I can resolve. Sometimes it has worked. Many a times it did not. So remember, don't, keep these things to your heart. The best thing is to work on something, work with tools, work with skills, see if they work. If they don't, move on. The sooner, the better. If you stick to them, you might actually lose an opportunity there. So that's the 30-day commitment. And as Puneet said, after this, in case if you decide to basically get into a lot more deeper and you really want to develop your own MCP server, your own skills, we have a full workshop for you all. And, there we can basically work on a lot more technical stuff, a lot more in-depth questions and then interact more, because that's an 8-day program or 4-week program, which will give us a lot more bandwidth to basically explore and interact. So that was it, guys. Thank you. And come to your question, Ravi Chandra. You said, how do you validate that this course is useful for the next 1 year? Well, the course and its validity, that's a very good question. Since the idea is that we are picking up on foundations, and foundations don't change. Just like the AI and ML is the foundation for LLM, and it does never change. It continues to be the same. Tools, yes, they will change. The field is evolving. You might actually see a new tool coming up in the market. You might see, Claude going away, not. Claude might come up with new tools, but there will be additions to what you're doing. If you understand skill, you will understand an agent. If you understand an agent, you will understand a pattern. So, so since the AI domain is evolving, it is always better that we pick up the basics and we know what is happening at the ground level. Everything else is, I feel everything else will become a lot more easier then. And, when the tools evolve, of course, we evolve with the tools as well. Or when the technology evolves, we need to evolve. And that's where, all of us need to share information. Maybe you would be the one who'd probably be taking that course next. Who knows? But yeah, that's my thinking again, because no one knows the future. No one knows where this is going. It's growing rapidly, it's growing fast. But having said that, we need to do our due diligence. Hope that answers your question, Rohit. Okay, are there any other questions? I know we just have about 2 more minutes left, and I don't want to keep you away from your family, especially on a Sunday evening.
Yeah.
That would be a
Hi.
crowd.
Yeah. Hi, Aman. I have one question. So
Yes, Sanjeev.
regarding you have mentioned one in one slide that skills should be updated, like you update your style guide. So will skills will have also the version control system or something like that, or how do you update?
Oh,
Uh,
Oh, skills are basically markdown files, right? So basically, what happens is, let's say you want to validate something, you want to just run a check, and today the check basically says, your heading should basically be starting with a verb and ing. But tomorrow, maybe that's not the standard that you would want. You would probably want to say that only head ones or H1 should basically be verb and ing, and H2s should not be using verb and ing, right? So, when you actually define the skill, you basically said all heading levels should have verb and ing. But now there is a new rule. I'm just making things up. It's more hypothetical. But now, there's another rule that has come up that H2s and H3s and H4s should not be using that. So what would you do? You would basically go back and change that rule that you created to basically break it down into two statements. Now, one is like for heading one, it is mandatory that you should be using verb ending. And for heading two, and for other headings, this is not mandatory or you should not be using verb ending. So basically, when I say skills should be changed, that basically means you will actually have to go and edit your markdown file, and then make sure that this file is always up to date.
okay, so what is the difference between the rules and the skills?
Oh, okay. Because rules are to cursor and skills
Okay,
is to clock,
okay.
right? So yeah,
Thank you, Aman.
sure. Thank you, Sanjeev. I see a question. We are yet to integrate AI in our doc workflows. We're still using blah blah. And where should we start? So AI integration, other tools to auto generate MD files out of existing RHMFM projects. Wow, that's an interesting question. And I would actually say your starting point should be ask this question to an AI agent itself. And maybe, you know what, you could actually come up with a Python project that could do this. And this whole process is called vibe coding. So, you have a question, you have a requirement. I think that's where you should actually start and then see if you can actually come up with a very mature and a strong process and go ahead and introduce your organization to that. And then say, here's a code that I've developed that can convert an existing FM project to so and so. And I've run some samples and this seems to be coming out fine. That's how things are starting. But again, every organization has a very specific requirement, integrations, tools, and all sorts of guardrails around it. So it'll be difficult. I think. I think the best thing I would do is go and talk to my manager and then check as to like what are the plans for AI integration at my workplace, and that's probably where I would start. But yes, I'll continue to work at my end because the manager will come back. Since you've asked us, you would be most probably you'll be the person who will probably be asked, like, okay, do you have any recommendations? Or do you have any suggestions? And I would say you should be prepared for that question.
Sure. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you,
Good
Mohammed. That was a
answers.
good
Thank you.
question. Divin, you say your opinion, you could ask the LLM to refine the prompt. Well, yes, you can, of course, but then that will basically take multiple iterations at the end. So, I would actually say as communicators, as technical communicators, we should be learning the language of prompting. We should actually be aware of prompting techniques than anyone else. We should be doing the right prompt and use the right language than asking LLM to refine it. But of course, yes, many of us do it. I do it sometimes. I ask LLM to refine it, but that should be like probably the last resort when I'm actually not seeing the results that I need.
Okay. Aman, thank you for it. I have one question. So yesterday I was asking about how we could use the LLM or AI for a daily task. Like we have so many thing on TWT and other things. We have a lot of files and other things. How we could extract information for a ready to go? Do you suggest something like Notebook LLM or something that we could use? And you told you will answer it in this session
Yeah.
today.
So my answer was like, I mean, this information, my answer was actually MCPs, right? Now, depending on where this information exists, I don't know what, so there's WhatsApp. I actually have to check if WhatsApp actually has an MCP. It should, because it's Facebook and they have MCPs there. But the idea here is that if you have information across these multiple domains and you want to basically make sure that you're on top of it, you need to be, making sure that you have connectivity across these tools. Right? You don't want to be manually, copying and pasting stuff. There's definitely MCPs that could connect Outlook, Teams, for sure. That's the Copilot stuff. Then there should be MCPs for other areas where you think that this information exists. And the next thing that you would actually have to do is once you've configured all of this in cursors or plots or wherever, just put in a message and then say, okay, how does my day look like today? And because you have already created all these connections properly, it should actually go and then, check in your Outlook, Teams, and whatnot stuff, and then it will give you, a clear list of what their day looks like. You have meetings, what you should be prepared for, which conference pages you should be referring to, which video you should be listening to, and so on. I mean, Slack today has a Slack bot that I love because that's exactly what I do. I click Slack bot, which is again an MCP for Slack, and I say, okay, how does my day look today? Trust me, the response that I get, I don't actually have to look into any other resources. It tells me pretty much everything that I should be doing for the rest of 8 hours, including when I should be taking a break as well. So, yeah, I mean, it all depends on what tools are you actually accessing. Hope that answers your question.
So Slack, you use it for professional thing. That's the thing that you do, right?
Right, right. Yeah.
Yeah.
For personal, I mean, I'm really bad at WhatsApp. I know Puneet will actually tell you I barely respond to people, but so yeah, I mean, I'm still looking at it. I don't spend a lot of time there, but if I mean that's a good one. I might I should.
Okay, looks like Aman has lost connection probably. Ah, yeah. Now he's Aman. Can you hear me?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah,
Okay,
so unfortunately, that's.
no
But yeah, I
problem.
mean, Devin, we can talk. I mean, in case if you have more queries, we can actually, probably, talk offline.
So
Sure,
let's
sure,
take
Aman.
one
Okay.
question here, last question probably. Bhargavi has this, how do we create personas in cloud and can a persona have different skills mapped to it?
Yeah, I mean, personas in Claude, usually when you actually create a skill, you can define what kind of person this skill is basically meant for. So personas is basically like, okay, I am a technical writer and I basically am working or I work on so and so. So that's your persona. If you start your skill with that statement, everything else follows that. That's how you can actually create a persona, tie it to a skill, basically both of it. And then you can actually have the same skill basically behave differently for a different person as well. I think it's the first line that I would use. I'd basically make sure that the first two sentences define the persona very clearly, even before I run a skill. Hope that answers your question, by the way. Okay,
So
thank you.
just to wind up, all done. Anybody has any other last question? Okay, good. I think we are pretty good now. So thank you so much, Aman, for 2 days of this knowledge sharing, that too on a weekend. And we look forward to more now in course also. And yep. Thank you everyone for joining and staying here. And we will be emailing the recording, sending you the recordings in email. Rest of the questions, feel free to connect with us and contact for course. Of course, you know how to contact. And yeah, do join that AI and tech writing WhatsApp group. We keep on having some chit chat there. You can have more. Okay, so thank you. Thanks for your time. Thank you, Aman.
Thank you all for spending this weekend with me and giving me an opportunity. This means a lot. You coming here is definitely an encouragement and a lot of support. So really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Aman, can you give your email address for contact?
You can reach me out on LinkedIn, Sanjay.
Okay.
We can actually connect on LinkedIn, and that would be much better.
Yeah, her LinkedIn, his LinkedIn profile link is right there on the event page, or else if you don't have, let me know.
Sure. Okay.
With the email
Thank you.
also, recording email also, we will share the link, LinkedIn profile.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, great. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Enjoy the remaining part of your weekend. Okay,
Thank you.
bye, Aman.
Bye.
Thanks, Puneet and Aman, all of you.
Thank
Have a good
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, Aman, take some rest now.
Bye.
Okay, great. Take care. Bye-bye.